Alright everybody, hope you're having a good afternoon. I've had to move my computer back a bit because the sun's always shining right through my window and it just kind of fucks up the lighting. So I've had to kind of slide back a bit, you know. So I wanted to come on and talk about legal highs, right? Because obviously they were hitting prisons a few years before I left, and they had such a huge impact. Like, I seen the deterioration and like the just the tremors that this kind of earthquake had caused in our penal system. Um, so obviously, I don't know if some of yous will know, but some of yous obviously will, that have maybe done time or whatever. This stuff is just like, it's a synthetic drug, like nobody even really knows what's in it, but the prison service call it NPS, new psychoactive substances, but nobody, we don't call it that obviously, do you know what I mean? They've got their words, we've got ours, they've got their jargon, we've got ours, you know. Um, I remember the first time that I ever seen it was in Low Moss. My pal showed me it, right? And it was just like, see when you put green in a grinder and you grind it up, it goes like that kind of granular way. That's the way it looked, right? And I remember taking like one draw of a joint and it was like palpitations. It was not a nice feeling. It was like it induced an anxiety attack or something. I was just like, fuck taking that shit, you know? So I didn't really know what the market was like in Low Moss for it or whatever, because obviously I wasn't actively seeking it or trading in it or whatever. But I remember when I went to Kilmarnock, like it had exploded by this point, right? It was everywhere, man, and like a lot of people were using it. In fact, like I would say a huge there was a huge portion of the prison using this shit, right? Um, and it started off like guys were just smoking it in joints, and then it evolved to doing it in pipes, then it evolved to doing it in buckets. Now, some of you have smoked like solid back in the day, like a bucket would be like a 2 litre bottle with the bottom cut off, and obviously you put it in water and pull it up, and the smoke falls in the bottle. Like they're sucking that into their lungs and it's like a 2 litre bottle full of the smoke, right? And I'm just like, fucking hell, man. Guys are collapsing, shrieking, running round in circles, pulling their hair out, ripping their clothes off, like pure patience, man. And I'm not going to lie. See, just seeing this in people, seeing that in a grown man, it was quite unsettling, it was quite frightening, do you know? Like, because you're living next door to somebody and they could be hammering that day in, day out. Um, at first it could be somebody like me, right? So say the way I'm coming across to you guys, you know, right? Like quite with it, quite lucid, quite maybe even intelligent or whatever. And then all of a sudden, man, you just see the lights went out behind my eyes and I'm looking dirty, unshaven. I always just look like my head's elsewhere, and then all of a sudden I just explode and commit some crazy act of violence or self-harming. Seen that, right, with guys coming off that shit and all that, and Jesus, man, it was fucking horrible, man. Um, and a good friend of mine actually kind of, it was taking it a lot, and then next thing, something happened, he get put in this egg, and then the boy just lost it, man, and it was fucking horrible to see, because he was always laughing and joking, and he was a good boy, you know. Um, and it was just a fucking horrible thing to see, man. Like, he was saying, like, there was voices in his head, they thought the screws had put a microchip in his arm or this kind of shit, and it's just not the same guy anymore. So I'm like, fucking hell, man, like, glad I never fucking hammered that shit, even took it like that, whatever. I remember, like, there was a couple of documentaries on as well, like, down England, I think Ross Kemp, I think that, know how that rapper, is it Professor Green, right? they'd done a couple of documentaries about it, and I'd seen one about it down Manchester and all, and like, I'm sure on the Ross Kemp one, he went into a jail in London, I think it was the Scrubs or Belmarsh, and I think he took a draw of a joint, and he was like, fucking hell, and serious, I'm sure there was a screw and all in this same programme, I'm sure he inhaled it like second hand smoke and had to fucking go to the hospital, shit like that, man. It's just fucking, it's crazy. And I remember there was a guy who, I knew a guy who was fae London, and he went down there for visits, accumulated visits, and see when he came back he told me that guys were basically spraying WD40 on letters and smoking it as legal high, right? And people were still buying it. And I'm sure he says to me, there was stuff with WD-40 sprayed on and stuff with real legal high sprayed on, and he says people wanted the WD-40 one even more than the other shit, and I'm like, fucking hell. And the thing is, I know, like, these effects will be irreversible. Like, say you're smoking green, right, obviously if you stop smoking it long enough, it'll come out your system. I'm no expert on it obviously, but it'll leave your system, you'll be less this, less that, less irritable, you'll get more sleep, whatever it is, right? But see, with this shit, man, this shit was the worst thing I've ever seen happen to the prison system in this country, like, without a shadow of a doubt. I'm sure they don't even give you your letters and your photos now, for what I've heard. Like, they used to give you, like, photos and wee drawings your brains had done, you know. Now they're photocopying all this because they're scared that this shit might be sprayed on it, and they're just not taking the chance anymore because of the damage this shit has done. Fucking crazy. Cause like, obviously with people doing a lot of time in that, like, they're kinda looking to, it's escapism for a lot of people, and plus a lot of people have had addiction issues and alcohol issues outside, like a massive population, a massive, like, kinda, what words am I trying to use? So if you went and asked 10 people in Berlin or in any other jail how many of them have took drugs, for every 10 people you ask, I would say at least 8 will tell you they've took drugs, had addiction issues, alcohol issues, whatever. So that's quite high. So that means for every 100, that's like 80%, 78%, whatever. This is high. So it's an ongoing thing. It's always been an ongoing thing, like drugs and alcohol with guys in and out of jail, you know. Like, even obviously, like, a lot of my offending was alcohol related, but it was also trauma related. Trauma was driving it, alcohol was compounding the offending, the rage and all that kind of shit. But it's just fucking, it's crazy the way it's went. Honestly, it's one of the most frightening things I've ever seen. Like, just be sitting one day in a bit of the jail, next thing you know, some guy just has a mad fucking outburst. He's running round in circles like a headless chicken, screaming, pulling his hair out, ripping his clothes off, fucking, or trying to tan his wrists with a tool. You're just like, what the fuck, man? Fucking horrible thing. And see, the reason that I wanted to do this video about it was because, see, the other night I seen a video on YouTube, right, and it was in a prison in America, and it was a guy in a cell. It was in like Alabama State Pen, whatever the fuck it was, right. There was a grown guy, and you could just tell straight away he took it, because I've seen enough of it to know the signs, right. And the guy was fucking wasted, man, and he was doing the craziest things in a cell. Like, you could tell he was hallucinating, he thought somebody was in front of him, and he was swinging a big dagger, swinging a big tool, right, and this guy's videoing on my phone going, put it down, not, you're alright. And I showed it to my son, and you know what my son said? Imagine that was your dad. Imagine your dad was in the jail, and you went online and seen that video, man. That hurt me like a gut punch, because you imagine I had went and hurt, you imagine I didn't come out of the jail the way I'm all now, right? And I was in jail hammering legal highs, wasting away to a fucking skeleton, and then somebody's videoed me having a fucking outburst on that shit, and then my son's out in the community and somebody showed him that, that's fucking gut-wrenching, man. That is just horrendous. So I thought, you know what, man, I maybe go and talk about that, no? Because obviously the damage I seen it doing, and the way it turned the jail for like everybody just puffing, charging whatever they were doing, making hooch even, to that's a different ball game, man. That just sent everybody to fucking hell, man, and wasn't a nice thing to see, you know. So just horrible. But if before I go, I would like to say that if there's anybody watching this, right, and you're ever looking at a sentence, and you get offered that shit, do yourself a fucking favour. Don't take that first step. Don't touch it. Because you could be that guy getting a phone call off your ma, you've been fun pan breed, you know. And see, the funny thing is, I know before I go, right, that I never mentioned, so see Porky, the guy I was talking about in my other video, he was hammering that shit, hammering that legal, right, and I believe that, see, that murder he ended up doing, I believe that was the end result of him doing that, because he was always like sound and could have a laugh with him and like all that shit, but I believe, see after hammering that shit, I believe that he just stopped giving a fuck, man. So just shows you, just give up the will to live and just end up flipping, man, and end up stringing yourself or stringing somebody else, man. Do you know what I mean? So think about what you're fucking doing and what choices you want, and no, well, what you want for yourself, because choices you make define how your life's going to end up, you know, and I know that as well as a lot of people. So I hope that was interesting for you, and I'll see you next time I'm on. Catch yous, have a good day.